Hey everyone, I'm so looking forward to this podcast conversation today with Kris Gethin. If you can look at the video where I'm posting more of our podcast first, check out the magazine covers that Kris has been on. Uh, yeah, he's pretty buff. So we're going to talk about transformation and how athletes can reverse their biological age. I continue to talk on this show about improving your future self now by recreating your current self. And as athletes, we tend to think we are fit and healthy, but not necessarily from the inside out. So we're going to learn from Kris, as well as I'll kind of put in my questions as well on how we can be healthier as we age, how we can be health optimizers. So let me bring on Kris Gethin. Check out his programs and resources and his new supplement line on krisgethin.com. We'll put all the links in the show notes if I said that wrong too. And I really am on a mission today to help spread the importance of recreating yourself today to improve your future self. When you're 80, how do you visualize yourself living life? I know I want to thrive and not struggle as I age. Part of that, 2 years ago today, my dad sadly passed away. I had that horrible phone call. My mom had to call and say my dad passed away in the hospital overnight. And that's led me to really focusing on this show how we can all be health optimizers. Just because you are exercising doesn't mean you're healthy, because a lot of the exercise we are doing as endurance athletes creates oxidative stress. Think of that bell curve of exercise benefits. No exercise, sedentary, the right amount, too much exercise. We're often over on the other side. And a lot of the research, the benefits of exercise is the moderate amount, top of that bell curve. So I always refer to the Goldilocks effect. What we can do is finding that right amount, that right dose, that's positive response in our body. Too much of anything, even cold plunges, sauna, fasting, can be too much stress, too much exercise, too much HIIT training, too much of everything in life. We have these external stressors that become chronic. When we have these hidden internal sources of stress that become chronic. Leaky gut, if you listen to some of my videos I did, Dr. Fasano said that almost all disease, from a gut that's leaky. So if you have a leak in your gut, you probably have some type of inflammation in different forms in the rest of the body. That inflammation relates to brain inflammation. So we really want to address healthy from the inside out. Exercise is great, making sure you're not doing excessive cardio as we age. That increases cortisol, increases chance for leaky gut, and increases oxidative stress. So we need to figure out the right dose. If you're training for a race, how can you improve recovery and repair so you're not doing more damage than good? Now, if you know my story, I wrote a book called Life is Not a Race, It is a Journey, and shared my personal struggles starting in 2013. I got adrenal exhaustion, and I was a high performing athlete trying to win my age group. Swimming was always my problem area of opportunity, that I was usually second or third, but I could bike strong and keep up on the run. Now, I haven't been able to race that distance again. My body has been damaged from all that training of chronic stress. And that led to what we call as FDN practitioners, metabolic chaos. So if you want to learn more on how you can thrive as you age, listen to Kris, listen to what I talk about in my videos, check out the YouTube channel, Coach Debbie Potts. I'll try to add more PowerPoint presentations to share what is metabolic health, what is mitochondria function, dysfunction, what is insulin sensitivity versus insensitivity. I want to share a lot of what I'm diving into with you and help you learn how to be a health optimizer, how you can take ownership of your health and create your ideal self by the choices you make today so your future self is thriving. So I'll stop talking, get off my soapbox, but just really important day for me to share the importance of doing what we can do now, take ownership of our health and help creating our optimal self in the future. Thanks for joining me. Listen in to Kris and see what you learn and let me know in the show notes. All right. I have a special guest on the show today, Kris Gethin. I was just showing actually, Kris, pictures of you, your cover model physique in the beginning while
Oh,
I was cooking for
beautiful.
you.
Thank you.
You've got some beautiful muscles on that body.
Yeah, well, it's very therapeutic. It's just an extension of the mental therapy. That's what it is. It isn't chasing aesthetics.
Yeah, that's good. So we're going to talk about that. I wanted to talk about, your purpose, about you. And today we're going to talk about how athletes can reverse biological age, transformation, all in line with what I've been talking about for the last year is how we can improve our future self and taking ownership of our health now and just listening to all this stuff at Hack Your Health conference the other week and just really loved your message. And it's not just, as you just said, about, getting building muscle to look good, but just the internal benefits as well. So I'll let you take over. What is your why?
The
What's your
why, the
story?
why. Well, my story is, I came from Wales and I grew up racing motocross for many years. Then I kind of got injured, and it was through physiotherapy. I went to a lot of specialists, and it's through physiotherapy that I was alleviated of the pain that I was dealing with. But I wasn't dealing with the kind of depression that I was going through at that time. I didn't recognize it as depression. And, because my identity had become associated with like extreme sports growing up, and then I didn't have these extreme sports anymore, I kind of fell into a flunk. So I was dealing with the mental pain and the physical pain, and I just went down a slippery slope of drugs and alcohol and partying. It was a crazy time there for a few years because I had this crazy mentality. And it was getting into the gym that put me on the
Mhm.
straight and narrow. That was my pivotal foot. And I felt like I had a release and a relief by going into the gym. And like I said, it wasn't just for aesthetic purposes, but I did then compete in drug tested shows for the next 10 years because it gave me a goal to work towards. It gave me the accountability. I didn't have a
Mhm.
trainer, but that kept me focused on something. And I wanted that something to keep me, I guess out of the bars and out of the party scene. And it worked. It definitely worked. But through consistency through the years, I felt that I didn't really need that anymore because I realized that I got into weight training, not because I loved bodybuilding as such, but I got into bodybuilding because I loved weight training. So then I just thought, well, the shows aren't really helping me. I don't really enjoy being on stage. I don't enjoy putting on the fake tan and removing the hair and all that sort of stuff. So I was able to continue then. But what I didn't realize was that even though I looked healthy and I felt okay, I didn't realize that I was doing myself damage because being a bodybuilder, I eat generally twice the amount as a normal person. And I wasn't looking at the food as sources from organic, wild caught, humane raised. I was looking at foods as macros. I just need to get
Mhm.
this amount of macros in and these calories in to fuel my workout to recover, and that is it. So I was consuming double the amount of antibiotics and omega-6 from factory farm fish, etc., because it was cheap, and that's what I was purchasing. And it wasn't until I was in India, staying in an apartment there in Mumbai, and unbeknownst to me, because it's very humid there, a lot of appliances break down within 6-12 months because of this
Mhm.
humidity. And so there's a lot of mold there. And I didn't realize that there was mold in the apartment that I was living in. And the effects from that just came slow and steady. So it wasn't really recognizable until it was too late. And, the symptoms that I had was just a lot of aggression, mostly around not sleeping, hardly at all. I was sleeping about 3 hours a night. And I recognized that I just didn't feel good. I wasn't a good person to be around. Luckily, I had the perception to realize that, and I acknowledged it, and I tried to seek help. And I tried to seek help for about a year there until I came across Dr. Spanaug in Oldsmar, Florida, who treats people with Lyme's disease and mold. And someone said to me, it may be mold. You may want to go and check this guy out. So I went there, did all the tests, and found out, lo and behold, I did have mold toxicity. After I left there 6 weeks later, that's when I really started focusing and researching, what else had mold in it? Well, it was coffee. It was a lot of grains. I'm eating a lot of grains. I was drinking coffee every day. Dark chocolate. It was in wine. I'd enjoy a wine, red wine every now and again, not knowing there's a lot of mold there. So that's when I really started going in the health optimization rabbit hole, as it were, and then really focused more so, even though I thought I was healthy, now I realized I wasn't, and I was trying to do whatever I can to optimize my health. And it was so weird because I'd dealt with so much inflammation for years in my joints, in my shoulders, in my knees, in my elbows. And I just thought it was a byproduct of weight training because every bodybuilder had some sort of niggling injury. And so when I started cleaning up my diet, looking at the sources of food that I was consuming more omega-6, looking at my blood panels and trying to optimize them, all of a sudden this inflammation had disappeared. Not only that, but the fogginess that I had in my brain. I didn't have like major brain fog. I'd say I had probably more so when I was younger in my 20s in Wales. But I felt so much more clarity. It was so crazy how it was so much of a turnaround. But keep in mind now my sleep has improved as well because I've optimized that and got rid of the mold toxicity and continued to collate that. And then I started looking into obviously the mouth. I had so many of these metal fillings in my mouth and a metal implant that I'd got both in the UK and in India, and realized, okay, because I had very high heavy metals in my bloodstream, and realized, well, that's a neurotoxin. Maybe that is causing some sort of mental imbalance here as well. So I sought out a building biologist and got all this metal taken out of my teeth. I even had a gold tooth at the front, and that was kind of a signature for me. I loved that gold tooth, but that came out because I was told by Dr. Dom, who's a good friend of mine in Germany, that acts like an antenna as well. So all that to be said, I looked at everything from more so an outsider's perspective, and I haven't looked back because it's just made me feel so much better. Some people will say, well, you're a little bit obsessed. Well, if this is an obsession, great. I don't mind being obsessed over it because I feel good about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love listening to everyone's story. That's why I always love to ask what people's why is, what drives them, because we always have a personal story that led us down this path to start this more holistic journey to be a transformation coach, a practitioner. Everyone's had some struggle. And it's interesting that so many of the struggles relate to mold. That's such a common
Yeah.
thing people don't know about.
Yeah, it's
What
more
test
common
did you
now
do?
because we're able to diagnose it. I did a lot of tests at Dr. Spanag's. I did a brain scan, I did blood tests, stool tests, urine tests, saliva. I did everything, absolutely everything. And when Dr. Spanag talked about all my symptoms, which nobody else had been able to explain to me, it felt like he'd lived with me for the past few years. He knew everything about me and what I was feeling. I was like, that is it. Because he could
Yeah.
see it all right in front of him. He was looking at the biofilm and absolutely everything. And yeah, that's what kind of, was an alarm bell for me. And it was good because I really had a passion about nutrition and training and health anyway. So when I learned about this, I really enjoyed going down the rabbit hole and learning so much more about this biohacking culture. This is going back in 2015 now, and learning from various people and then just applying little bits of that book to make my own, because not what everybody else is going through, you can't always relate, but maybe there are a little bit of, so there's a chapter here and a chapter there, and then you'll have your own journey mapped out for you.
Yeah, I think that's important to note that it's personalized. We are all unique individuals, and there's not one size fits all to figure out what's best for you. And we talk as FDN practitioners, there's external stressors that become chronic for doing anything too much of that Goldilocks effect. And then there's these hidden internal stressors that no one really knows about and you don't correlate it all together like, oh, that's really what it could be coming from is that mold or whatever it might be. But these hidden stressors we always learn are called hidden, stands for hormone dysfunction, immune dysfunction, digestion, detoxification, energy systems, neurotransmitters. I mean, it just is really helping people put the missing pieces of a puzzle together so they can live their best life and be their best self. Sounds like you've done
Yeah.
that. Now you're kind of paying that forward, helping others do the same.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you have to recognize is that we are all individuals. Some people are very electrosensitive to Wi-Fi EMFs, but other people point the finger and think they're just woo-woo and hippie just because they don't feel those effects. Just like some people are allergic to peanuts, other people aren't. Doesn't mean it's
Mhm.
not there. So we just have to kind of recognize that. And I've been able to quantify that with my heart rate variability. If I am around a lot of EMF and Wi-Fi, I just check my HRV and I see that it starts to tank. So then I know, okay, I've got to earth myself a little bit more. I've got to do whatever I can to mitigate this damage. Am I going to cure myself of it while I'm in LA, New York, Vegas, or whatever? Well, probably not. But I need to double down on my biohacks. Of course,
Mhm.
being here in Boise, Idaho, I don't feel that I need to so much. I'm on the outskirts. And I've had a building biologist, Brian Hoyer, come to my home, and that was a real eye opener for me when he came to my home and he'd had these like Faraday tents, you could call them tents.
Mhm.
And I put it on my bed and I slept in it that night, because it blocked all EMF. Because he was telling me that I had the highest signal in my bedroom and I had dirty electricity in my bedroom. And when I slept in there that night and I checked my scores, it was off the charts that I had not seen before. So I did
Wow.
it again the following night, same again. So that's made me realize, okay, this isn't woo woo. There's actually something to this. It didn't make any difference to my wife's sleep, none
Mm.
whatsoever. She slept
Yeah.
in one of these tents as well. It's quite weird, both of us in these tents in bed, but it made no difference to her. So it just goes to show that some people are electrosensitive when other people aren't, and that cannot be a placebo effect if you're sleeping.
Yeah. I'm just finishing up Wild Health Precision Medicine course fellowship that's epigenetics. So tying in genetic reports, I've done a few different programs before, but it's always fascinating to correlate genetics, SNPs with your blood chemistry panel with a gut test and really help people figure out, as for myself, like, why did I get adrenal exhaustion, whatever it might have been, from doing Ironmans and running my own fitness studio and just burning the candle at both ends? And other people can still race today, 10 years later, and still do the same schedule I was doing almost, but I couldn't handle it. So it's just really unique.
Yeah, you look at Ozzy Osbourne, how's that guy still alive? Drunk so much alcohol where other people would have been dead by 30. There's just outliers out there wherever we look. And that's why I said, we can't compare ourselves. Unfortunately, with social platforms today, we're very quick to compare ourselves. And it causes even more disarray and depression and whatnot. And you just have to be aware and find that we are unique in our own certain way. We all have our weaknesses and we all have our weapons. And we just got to recognize that, we can balance them out.
Yeah. I always love the quote I got from yoga a few years ago. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah,
And how,
correct.
just and that's what social media does you, especially if you're a coach or practitioner, you're trying to build a platform and get recognition. It's just, to me, I just rather stay away from it. It's too
Yeah.
stressful. And I know I am prioritizing my health over building social media empire because that's a stressor to me if I do too much or if I compare myself. Oh, Susie has blah, blah, blah followers and they have that many video likes. And you just have to not go there.
Yeah, isn't it weird how our stature in the world has come down to likes and followers?
Just stupid.
Who's going to take you seriously if you don't have 1,000 followers or whatever it is? It's kind
Mhm.
of odd. I definitely wouldn't be on social platforms if it wasn't for my businesses, but I'm very careful to use it and not allow it to use me. You know, the one thing that I do love about social platforms is, like, I remember growing up in Wales, you know, I'd go to the local newsagents waiting for the monthly copy of Muscle Mag or Flex magazine to come in. And then I would look at all these articles from all these bodybuilders and think that that was gospel, because I didn't have the opportunity to ask any of these people these questions. Years later, I was actually working for these magazines, and then I realized, wow, it's not even these athletes writing the articles. It's us. It was other writers, you know, writing on behalf of them. But we didn't have the opportunity to interact. Now we have social platforms where we can interact. So that's why I feel very blessed that we can actually utilize these platforms where people can ask us questions, we can educate, and we're a little bit more accessible now, or people are, a lot more people are more accessible now. And, you know, I think that's why it's very important that you know, if you're going to use it to its advantage, and don't use, you know, allow it to abuse you to your disadvantage.
Yeah, and with that, I'm going to bring up these pictures again. So here's your transformation, your website, krisgethin.com. You've been an athlete, you've done Ironman, Spartan racing, and your cover model, obviously, on a lot of magazine covers. But what you talk about coaching people transformation, you were mentioning at Hacker Health Conference how we can reverse biology or biological age, and how all of this, I was just saying how we, as endurance athletes, we actually create more oxidative stress, and we're causing probably leaky gut from excessive training. And it's that Goldilocks effect for everything. So what have you found is people, I say, think we're fit and healthy because we exercise, we train, we can do a marathon, an Ironman, a race of any distance, but we're not always healthy from the inside out, and how that relates to creating our ideal self in the future. So when we're 80, 90, 100 years old, you know, how does that connect together? What we should be doing now, maybe things a little differently.
Of course, you know, so every sporting endeavor is treated completely different, from a nutritional standpoint, from a fasting standpoint, from a lot of standpoints. So, yeah, I did 4 Ironman triathlons. I've done ultramarathon, etc. So I know the negative effects that you can get from long endurance sports, you know, because it requires a lot of time. So I was very conscious, and the people that I train now, I'm not saying that I'm the world's best triathlete coach by any means, but I really shortened the length of a lot of my workouts. So I did a lot of sprints. I did a lot of hill sprints. I did all the running off-road, more or less, because I'm a bigger person anyway. But I just found it was so much more efficient to go to the pool, have my workouts, but then go to the pool, for instance, and just do a lot of sprints. The only time that I would actually spend a long time would be like on one day a week, which is a non-training day, and it would be like on a Sunday, and I'd go for a long ride, because you had to be used to being in the saddle for over 100 miles, you know. So that was the only day where I felt that it was kind of extensive. But I'd go very, very high on fats, making sure that I had real good quality sleep the night before. If I didn't, I wouldn't go out and ride, because it was very important for me to optimize my testosterone levels, because I know that through a lot of endurance, you can drastically decrease your testosterone levels, because, like you said, it's become a systemic stress. It's not acute, like if you're going to do a sprint or ice bath or intense workout. It's now more systemic. So you have to kind of recognize that. But what I generally do with clients now, the majority of them going through transformations, there's several things. Number one, I always optimize their sleep. That's the first thing that I look at. I don't give them a training program. I don't give them a nutrition program until we've optimized their sleep cycle. Because out of all the biohacks that I believe that has helped reverse my biological age, whether it be stem cells, hyperbaric oxygen, PEMF, whatever, sleep, I'd say, has been the number one. But people don't always value that because it's free. And we, as you mentioned, tend to burn a candle at both ends, especially when you have people that are more from athletic backgrounds. You're always trying to pull them back and rest more, as opposed to push them to train more. So that's number one. Number two, I always look at hydration to see if they're optimizing their performance and their recovery and their mental health through hydration, because if we're working hard, chances are we're perspiring. We need a transporter of those nutrients. That's number two. Number three is earthing and grounding, because as I said, a lot of us can be electrosensitive. It has been shown in studies. I don't know if you guys have seen, Clint Ober's movie called Earthing, or read his book, where it actually shows that it can be anti-inflammatory. And as we know, inflammation can again cause systemic stress. So I get my clients to earth ground every day. If they're in a city, they can't do it. They can wear like earthing trainers, like the Bahi, that they're comfortable. I even run in them, so they're comfortable. Mm-hmm. There's no reason why you shouldn't be earthing yourself every day.
So earthing, just to define real quick, earthing, if people don't know what that is, it's just barefoot, walking, connecting to the earth.
Yeah, taking your shoes and socks off, standing on the grass or on the sand or whatever it may be. So you're absorbing a lot of these negative ions that can be anti-inflammatory. So for instance, I've got an EMF reader here at home. If I hold my iPhone in this hand and my EMF reader in this hand, my EMFs go through the roof. It's all the way up. But then if I take my shoes and socks off, holding the EMF reader and my phone, now it goes all the way down, because it's penetrating through me now, not just into me. And we're just getting penetrated all day, every day. So I like my clients to be kind of conscious of that. And then, as I said before, looking at the sources of the food, making sure that we're getting plenty of high levels of omega-3s in comparison to the omega-6, that you're not consuming antibiotics, that we are prioritizing gut health. So I'll usually just, have my clients do various tests, blood tests, gut tests, etc., just to see where we're at, so we can optimize the opportunist flora within the gut, because a lot of the hormones and the immune system is actually created within the gut. And a lot of that is actually nullified because the food that we've been consuming, or the antibiotics that we've been consuming over the years. And a majority of the antibiotics that are consumed by humans are not from the pharmacy, it's from the food that we eat. So that's another thing. Whether we want to add in probiotics or kefir or anything like that, that's another thing again. And then meditation, focusing on putting yourself in that parasympathetic state, because we're always trying to achieve more. We've got work commitments, family commitments, deadlines, and then we usually, lack in sleep, but we've got to work out as well. But we're usually in this sympathetic state where we're just go. We're wolfing down foods. We're moving on to the next thing. So I really try to get my clients to start off with a meditation in the morning. By the way, bookending their day, no phone for an hour in the morning, no phone for at least an hour before bed. But during that hour of peace in the morning, within that, not the entire hour, but they are meditating to kind of put themselves, to get rid of a lot of the stresses that may encounter throughout the day, but just to put a positive affirmation of gratitude towards their day, to start with deeper breaths, so you can go into a more parasympathetic dominant state whilst you're working out, whilst you're consuming your meals, making sure that you're putting your fork down between bites, acknowledging the taste, the texture, the smell, the color, etc. So again, you're in that rest and digest state, and you're bringing those stress hormones, that cortisol level, down low. And one of the reasons why I wear these blue light blocking glasses, not all the time, but if I'm in harsh lighting or low ceilings, if I'm in a gym that has harsh lighting, then I'm wearing these, because that flicker can raise cortisol as well. And we know that a little bit of cortisol is fine. It keeps us alert, but we don't want to have an overabundance of that. So it's usually the basics that we look at first, even though most people will come to me and say, well, shall I get this biohacking device? Shall I take this supplement? Shall I do this? Shall I go and get stem cells and take Epitalon and stuff like that? I always look at the basics first. And once we have that down with consistency, then we can kind of look at these other modalities. So we try to start off with our ancestral wisdom, and then we look at today's technology.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's what people need to start with is sleep. It's such a, I call it the holistic method. I have 8 elements similar to that, but it's it is working on sleep is so essential. And I have a good example this week. I kind of just feel tired. I'm paying attention to my body because I've learned to do that last 10 years. My Aura ring broke and is not working, and I have to get a new one. And my Garmin watch died too. So I'm actually going old school and paying attention to how I feel. I could tell I was a little more tired. And for females, it's late luteal phase, like you'd more nurture phase. So I shouldn't be pushing it. So my focus wasn't getting to the gym at 5:50 in the morning. It was waking up when I want to wake up naturally. And instead of doing a hard workout and going for a run or a bike ride that was hilly, I just did everything, made me walk and then maybe some run. And then I just redid my workout this week because I wasn't feeling energized. So I think you have to, it's so important to look at yourself and really look at, is my sleep going well? And what I need to do is prioritize that. But how I start the day and how I finish the day, and it not starting, as you said, with supplements and all these pieces of equipment people have to spend a lot of money on, that it go back to nature and ancestral wisdom and stuff that's free. Like walking in your bare feet and getting grounding, earthing, morning sunlight. I mean, all the stuff that people I think forget about. They're all into buying all this stuff, and you could just walk outside.
Yeah, of course. And, speaking of walking, movement is so important. We consider 30 minutes cardio or an hour minutes weight workouts, and that is it. We're done for the day. But
Yeah.
our ancestors didn't do that. They was constantly moving. If you look at a lot of the blue zones in Okinawa, they don't have a word in their language for retirement. So they're always moving. And you look at a lot of these blue zones, their villages, a lot of the time, are on steep hills and they're walking everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why it's important. And it's great for blood sugar regulation. If you're an athlete, you're generally consuming a little bit more, so you don't want too much of a blood sugar spike.
Yeah.
And as we know, a lot of us wear, 24-hour blood glucose monitors now. We can see what is spiking us more than others. Rice doesn't have an impact on me, but sweet potato does. So I'm cognizant of that. If I'm going to have a lot of sweet potato, then I'm going to do some movement after that, or take a GDA or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've been trying to talk more about that. Movement is so essential. I think for athletes, especially because they do their workout, say in the morning, and they sit all day. And again, it's being fit and healthy from the inside out, that we forget movement throughout the day and getting up and having those little movement snacks. Luckily, my house is down 32 stairs from here. Our yard is up top. And so I to go back to the bathroom to go to the house, I actually have to move. So, finding little tricks that you can add in those movement snacks throughout the day, I think is so important, and getting those steps in. I always talk about to clients that aren't athletes, movement's one thing, exercise is another thing. Focusing on prioritizing strength training and doing your sprints and not doing that chronic cardio might be good for some people, but then don't forget that movement throughout the day, I think, is
Yeah,
essential.
exactly. It's a great for joint mobility and synovial fluid, the lubrication to the joints. Obviously, it helps with some balance and bone density, especially for older clientele. And I learned a lot about movement in between exercise, mostly from doing a couple of tours with Ben Greenfield. I would notice that when we were at an airport, he's constantly moving.
Always.
If we were in an office having a meeting, he's moving, he's stretching. The guy doesn't stop. If he's taking a phone call, he'll go for a walk.
Yeah.
So I kind of observed, and I'm like a child. I learned from observation. So it made me realize, okay, if I'm at an airport, I'm moving.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't know if you know, I did Ben Greenfield's superhuman coach program. So 2010, started doing his coaching when he was a young 20-something-year-old. And
Oh,
his Peon
awesome.
program, and I did coaching with them. So it's Ben Greenfield coaching team. And so every time we have our monthly calls, we used to have monthly calls with them, and he'd always be walking outside and podcasting as you are doing on a walking treadmill. Is not sitting still, but just that movement. And listening to Dr. Casey Means on her book tour and all of her podcasts. I love what she's just saying, movement is so essential for that blood glucose post meals and just getting throughout the day. Just simple things again. It doesn't take much. Doesn't cost
Yeah,
anything.
exactly. Yeah, for sure. And it just makes you feel good. It releases some endorphins, it gets the blood flowing to your brain, you feel more alert, you're more awake. A lot of people say, well, I don't have the energy to move. Well, if you actually moved, you'd have the energy. It works the other way around.
Yeah, I don't it's hard for me to understand how people don't want to get up and go outside because I do not wake up unless I get up and move and get outside and get moving. And if it's just a walk down the block, 10 minutes, it's 5 minutes. It's just I need that fresh air. And I think people don't realize how good it feels to be out in nature in the morning in that fresh air and how your day begins at a different level than if you just rolled out of bed into the shower into your office or left your
Yeah.
house. I think it's
Yeah,
good.
we know that during lockdown, the mental disorders or the psychiatric disorders or the debilitating mental disorders that came from that, because a lot of us were shut up. We were inside. We weren't allowed to go outside. There was very little movement or sunlight, and it had a negative effect on people. Now, of course, we don't have that lockdown now, but people need to kind of realize and not forget about that and not
Mhm.
take what we have for granted because it doesn't last forever.
No. I know I was saying beginning of the show, my focus, because so 2 years ago, my dad sadly passed away to this day 2 years ago, and that he was just turned 80, and just how just all the stuff we're doing now kind of empowers me to keep sharing this message and getting it out to people, even though what you're doing now, but it goes back to what you keep talking about is how are you going to be living life when you're older and doing everything you can improve the quality of life as you age and live a longer life, but that you can move well and travel. And going back to what you said in Europe, all those TV shows we watch that are in the towns in Greece or Italy or Spain. I did notice that all show like they always have to walk upstairs and hills. No wonder why those guys are older people can do that. Look at what they're walking. You always notice that in those episodes. So I want to get to nutrition because that's a big topic for athletes. You have been Spartan racing, endurance sports, and bodybuilding. Again, different fueling systems for each. What is your philosophy on nutrition and thoughts on aging athletes?
Well, I've tried absolutely everything. I did one of my Ironmans on a keto diet. I've done extensive fasts, like 5-day fasts. I've done carnivore, you name it, I've done it. I've gone vegan for 2 months just to try that because my wife challenged me and she was vegan at the time. She's not anymore. Um, and the one thing that I found that has worked best for both myself and my clients is just your typical like 30 30 40, so it'd be higher, well, 30% fats, and then higher the base is then split between your carbohydrates and protein, so it's a balanced approach of carbohydrates, protein, and fats. That is what I found has worked the absolute best. Now, because generally athletes are consuming a lot more meals, what I will generally do is have my clients fast on their non-training days just to take some of the stress away from their gut, from their digestive system, just to give them a little bit of rest and digest, because we're constantly signaling the mTOR pathway all the time. This mTOR
Mhm.
is a pathway and an enzyme that creates anabolism, that builds muscle, and it gets signaled every time that you eat. But what we don't do is then create a pathway of autophagy, which is that self-deep cleaning of our damaged DNA, our folded proteins, etc., and signaling that AMPK pathway. So I'll generally have them fast on a non-training day. Now, it depends on that individual, their sleep cycle, if they're male or female, is dependent on how long I will get them to fast on that non-training day, okay? And then, the one thing that I noticed when I started doing endurance sports, I was absolutely astounded by how bad these athletes ate. Even though some of these athletes were like professional triathletes
Yeah.
that I was training with, their diet was absolutely unbelievable. And you'd only stop at some of the aid stations to see how bad the food was available. Triathlon was a lot better than ultramarathon, I'll tell you that.
Mhm.
Like triathlon was bad, but ultramarathon was horrendous. Like they even had alcohol on the aid station 13 miles before the end. But it was your usual M&Ms and chips and pizza and just
Yes.
crap.
Yeah.
And in the triathlons, at least you'd have some fruit at the aid station as a possibility should you want it. But the rest was pretty crap. And then you'd have a free pizza and cookies at the end. It was just really, really bad. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it, because here we are causing so much inflammation through exercise. And then we're going to compound that with more inflammation through the foods that we're consuming. So all that to be said, yeah, there is, for instance, I've got my father on a keto diet. I have some people on keto diets, but it doesn't work for everybody. But for the most part, I found the typical split of the 40-40-20. I think I said 30 before. The 40-40-20 seems to work best.
Mm. Yeah. So for men and women?
For men and women, yes. You know, if I'm most of my clients are coming to me because they want to transform. I have some professional athletes in like MMA and motocross and stuff, but the vast bulk are coming to me because they want to transform. They want to burn fat, number one, and then create some tone or some muscle density as number two. So I've found that, you know, training people through the last 25 years now, the 40-40-20 has been the way to go.
And do you do any strategic carb timing for more anaerobic workouts?
Yeah, so, you know, I'm all about the peri and post-workout carbohydrates loading. So I will generally have the clients have the vast majority of their carbohydrates pre and post-workout, whilst they're a little bit more insulin sensitive, and shuttle some of those carbohydrates to be utilized as fuel later on, because I will generally deplete them a little bit later throughout the day, so I know their muscle and liver glycogen is relatively low at that time. Like if I'd have them, so for instance, if I have a client fast throughout the day, I will generally have them carb load before bed, so that helps release serotonin. They sleep a little bit better. I don't mean immediately before bed, but in the evening.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't give them as many carbs the following day, because I know their muscles and liver still have some glycogen in there.
What are your examples of carbs? Because I always feel like we should call them nature's carbs versus crap. I mean, carbs just get a negative
Oh, yeah, good call. Good
word to it.
call. Yeah. So, you know, it's generally like your tubers, you know, like your potatoes, your sweet potatoes, your yams, and then like rice. Rice is another one that I generally use. And I don't mind oats every now and again, as long as they're organic. But I usually prefer to go for like cream of rice, like an organic cream of rice, if somebody wants
Must be
carbohydrates in the
British.
morning.
Never heard of cream of rice. That must be a British thing.
Cream of
Cream
rice?
of
No. It's American actually. You
it
can't
is.
get it in the UK. It's definitely a bodybuilding staple of
Oh,
carbohydrates in the morning that comes from rice.
oh. How do you make it creamy?
You just cook it in water. That's
Oh,
all it is. You just cook
it's
it in
just rice.
water, and it expands kind of like oats. And
Mm-hmm.
then some people will just have it plain. You can actually buy
Mm-hmm.
flavored ones, you know, that's sweetened with monk fruit. But a lot of people just add their protein powder to it and mix it. So whatever they add to
Mm-hmm.
it is the flavor of it now.
That's funny. And with fasting, when you're exercising, do you have a typical eating time restricted feeding window, 12-12 or something? And then workout, you said non-workout rest days. You said it varies, but what's kind of the average range?
Usually about 16 hours. And this isn't, again, if I'm working with people that want to optimize their performance, or they want to build muscle or whatever, it isn't a typical fast that like Dr. Sachin Panda or Dr. Jason
Yeah.
Fung would suggest. I call it a controlled fast. So during that time, they will obviously consume fluid, but in that fluid, they can have essential amino acids in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't like the
Mm-hmm.
perfect fast. It is going to help clean house and take stress away from your digestive system. But having some, you know, essential amino acids throughout the day, maybe some electrolytes, that isn't going to cause too much of an issue and prevention of catabolism.
Yeah. And that's why I feel that last, I don't know, 5 years or 10 years, whenever fasting started getting popular. And I know I started getting into it. A lot of us athletes did, and realized, oh, they're talking about the benefits of fasting are for the sedentary, metabolically unhealthy people, not us exercising once, twice a day and very active, that might not be as beneficial as we heard it was, because it's talking to a different crowd. Trying to
Yeah,
clear that up,
exactly.
that we're,
Yeah, for sure. And you
it's not all
always
the
have to
same.
look at people's blood work to make sure their hormones are in check before even thinking about extensive fasting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. Look at the blood markers. And
Exactly.
that other question was about supplements. As I know you've talked about that on your platform. When should we supplement?
So it all depends what we're looking at. If it's performance-based supplements like a pre-workout or electrolytes, whatever, then I don't have an issue with anybody taking a pre-workout, dependent on what it is. Of course, if you're dealing with adrenal fatigue, then you may want to stay away from any stimulant-based, like your typical caffeines that are usually in high amounts of these pre-workouts. And then again, a lot of these performance-based supplements, let's call them that, you have to look at a lot of the ingredients because they shouldn't be part of the health sector, because you can have high levels of heavy metal contaminants or artificial colors, artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners, and like I said, high stimulants. Maybe they're not third-party tested. So you kind of have to look into a lot of those things, make sure that you read the label. But when it comes to other supplementation, whether it be like vitamin D or omega-3s or whatever, I always like to look at people's blood work before I make suggestions, because all supplements, for the most part, have a benefit. But what are you going to do? Take all of them? You'd probably die within 5 minutes if you did. So we have to look at everything a little bit more strategically. Whatever we can get through nutrition, great, we do that. But if you have deficiencies, then we may have to optimize that through supplementation. But I always like to look at people's background, their blood work, etc., first before throwing that in. But then on the other end of the spectrum, I have a lot of clients that are extremely busy. They cannot physically get their 5 or 6 meals in that are solid meals. So then they'll have to rely on protein shakes or meal replacement shakes just for the added convenience. You know, I prefer clients to eat all their meals as opposed to take supplements. However, if it means that they're going to miss meals, then we lean upon them.
Yeah, obviously real food first, you're saying, but if you can't get to it, that's when a shake comes in. And I think I hear different people bashing people for taking powder or substances, but it's that or nothing. So wouldn't you rather get some nutrition in some form rather than not getting it at all?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know why people bash supplements. So, for instance, a powder, all it is extracted from dairy, you know, if we're talking
Mm.
about whey protein isolate, but it is now without the lactose, without the sugar, and without the fat. And if it's naturally sweetened and flavored, and it has digestive enzymes added to it as well, it actually can be healthier than your standard dairy. So I don't see what, and the bioavailability of it is very, very high. So it's
Mhm.
great to take around your workouts if you want a fast-acting protein to optimize your recovery, knowing that you're going to train again 23 hours later.
Yeah, I think that's an important part, especially if you're doing a 2 day as a triathlete. I typically swim at lunchtime and work out in the mornings. I have, say 8 a.m. until 12 p.m. that I have a in between workouts that I need to figure out fueling and proper recovery so you can fuel again. And it's always, looking at your time of day exercising and your meal timing around there, working with each client individually based on their schedule and sleep.
Yeah, and
So,
you know this, you know, from doing Ironmans or triathlon yourself, that you can't always stop and eat solid meals. You know,
hmm.
when you're out there in your bottles, you've generally got your nutrition in your bottles as well because it's more convenient, right?
That's why I love being the fat adapted athlete, we'd call it, because I didn't have to eat as much and I could go longer, because that's how it kind of led me into being more of a low carb athlete doing Ironmans. Because I was doing in the beginning, I started Ironmans 2001. I was throwing up half the time because I'm trying to take a whole bottle of all this stuff every hour, and then biking and just it come back up because
And
there's,
that's right.
yeah, it's,
And
you
it just
learn.
goes to show that individuals can recognize this as well, because some people can eat a very high carb meal and go work out straight away and have no issues. But
Hmm.
other people need to have that digest, or that, like you said, need to rely on ketones or be fat adapted in order to optimize their fueling system.
Yeah, I'm the special student that always needs a little bit more changes in how they do everything. So with nutrition, is as we were talking, carnivore is such a hot topic, and a lot of people are more the lifting weights and strict on carnivore. What are your thoughts in the carnivore space to a lot of your friends? I think you're in that circle. The half people are like all in, and others are kind of keto carnivore, eat real food. What is your take on being strict
Yeah,
carnivore?
like I don't vilify any diets out there as long as they're made up of whole foods, you know. I'm
Yes.
not really into this if it fits your macros lifestyle where you're eating processed foods. As long as it comes from a whole food base, I have no problem with it whatsoever. And I've done carnivore, and I know it can be a great reset for someone's gut health. If some people, I know some people that have had prostate problems where they've had inflammation of the prostate and they have frequent urination throughout the night. Then they went carnivore and it went, you know, so everybody's going to react different to it.
Yeah.
I always say try before you buy. You know, if you try it for like 4 weeks and you really, really enjoy it and you're able to quantify it with blood work, then that's the path for you. You know, you feel good on it, you feel great, optimized brain, the energy from the brain feels so much better. Then go for it. It's like when I've gone keto, I noticed from my brain energy and health standpoint, I feel phenomenal. I'm so focused, I'm energized. It's like a pre-workout for my brain. But from a physical standpoint, I don't feel that it's fueling me for my workouts. I get a little bit flatter in my physique. I feel a little bit depleted. So it's like, okay, well, it's a balancing act. Maybe I can cross flow and do a cyclical approach towards that. So I think you just got to find the path that works for you. But I think it's absolutely fine for most part if they don't have any underlying issues. Give it a go.
Yeah. I think it gets confusing people listening to different podcasts and platforms that it's like, eat this, don't eat that. It's like, it's what you're saying is what I always say too is eat real food that balances blood sugar, that gives you energy, makes you feel good. And it's individualizing it and trying it out. And that's why I always find carnivore is a great option for the elimination diet because I always talk about what are oxalates, lectins, phytic acid, and FODMAPs, and all
Mm.
this stuff that can cause gut irritation. To remove those, what do you end up with? All it is meat. So, looking at an
Yeah.
animal-based diet works for some people, but I think it's some people don't want to do that strict even for 30 days. It's hard to get them to realize it might be beneficial to do a reset. But there's a lot of
Yeah.
interest.
And, you know, and people will be quick to bastardize these things. So when keto became popular, probably, you know, really popular about 6, 7 years ago, India followed. So I've got a gym franchise in India. So I travel there a lot. And I noticed when they started applying the keto, they were just eating loads of bacon and ghee. And, you know, ghee is okay, but they were just overdoing it in regards to the fats, like really bastardizing it.
Mhm.
So I think you have to, again, just be very conscious of using these to your advantage and not abusing them to your disadvantage.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what happened with keto is people started overdoing all the fats and not paying attention to the body, forgetting about protein, eliminating carbs, and they were just doing all fat. And then they were just starting to eat the crap keto labeled food that gets produced. Cause I go to Expo West Natural Product Show and walk the show each year. It's like, oh my gosh, this stuff is filled with garbage. Read the ingredients. It's not one ingredient real food, have some butter, have some
Yeah.
ghee, just it's amazing what happens when you start marketing. But I don't think they can do that with carnivore as much because it's meat based. So I'm sure they'll figure out a way to ruin it, but someone will.
Yeah, you just have the pork cracklings and you just have the kind of fatty jerky and that's about it.
Yeah. So I know what else is going on? You've got some new products out and you got a lot of different businesses going. Tell us where to find you and what to look for and
For
how to
sure. Yeah.
transform.
So yeah, the most recent venture that I've been working on for quite a long time now, is the release of my new brand called Unmatched, which is kind of merging the sports performance sector with the health sector. So using some novel ingredients that have not been used in the US here yet, like creatine, which is a creatine combined with GAA, guanylyl acidic acid. So it's more neuroprotective. So it's got a better, stronger, it crosses the blood-brain barrier much more efficiently. So it gives you a more nootropic effect, but a brain protective effect. That's the main thing. And the increase of uptake is so much more efficient. So then we, as you know, you're at Hack Your Health, we've used Sean Wells's ingredients, paraxanthine, in our pre-workout, as opposed to your general caffeine. And you know, we're making sure that all these products are naturally sweetened, naturally colored, naturally flavored, etc. So I feel for us to formulate them, these products, it only took us probably about 8 months to formulate them, but it took us a lot longer to actually sweeten them because they were naturally sweetened, not artificial. And artificial is very, very easy if you're using sucralose or ACE, but definitely didn't want that. So that took up the vast majority of our time because I wasn't happy until I felt that it was the best tasting products out there, because I do recognize I'm not your general consumer. I come from the 80s bodybuilding style where I will consume a shake and I don't care what it tastes like. I just think of fuel as my future as opposed to fun food for now. You know, I'm always thinking, okay, is this meal going to harm my future or going to heal it? I don't care what it tastes like. But the general consumer today is very taste driven. So that's where we spent the majority of our time. And yeah, we've got a gym franchise in India and we're looking to expand 2 more gyms there this year. I'm going to go back in November for a tour of seminars, and just busy with my coaching, but I'm going to take this weekend off and go mountain biking and boating and get on my motorbike because I've been away for so many weeks here now, and then head over to visit my family again in Wales next month. Yeah, next month. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of travel. I've got some more speaking gigs happening this year. But if people do want to find me or ask any questions, they can just go to my Instagram. I'm quite reactive on there. And it's Kris, Kris, last name Gethin, Gethin.
Yeah, you should be in London now. This weekend, a lot of people are there today for the biohacking.
Yeah, this is the very first time I haven't spoken there. Very, very first time. But because I just came from the UK, I was there for 5 weeks. And I'm going back to the UK next month, and I've got travel every month this year. I thought, you know what, like Tim is one of my very best friends who puts on the event. I just spoke to him this morning. And, you know, it is my favorite event of the year, but unfortunately I can't make it.
I know. I so wanted to go every year because my friend Angela Foster's one of my fellow coaches from Ben Greenfield program. She lives there and she was MC, I think, last year or did something with them, but she speaks and lives in London.
What's her
And I was
name?
like, Angela Foster. She is the
Oh yeah,
high
I know
performance
Angela.
coach.
I know Angela. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know her. I did an interview with her last year in the VIP lounge while we're both having IVs.
Oh, fun. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah,
And I
she's
was like,
great.
oh, I want to go to that so bad. And I was trying to figure out how to do it. So for sure, I need to get there somehow next year. And
Well, I'm
I,
making the plan next year, so let's do it.
yeah, for sure. So I know I'm going to Italy in May, so I just try to figure out stay there, work remote.
Ah, wow. Yeah, that'd be the way.
So the unmatched supplements, I did want to add, I know I was talking to Sean Wells about this. I find I don't do well with stevia. It gives me a headache in 5 minutes. Right away, I know if something disagrees with me. But he was talking about the stevia, and I found this at Expo West Natural Products Show. A lot of them are changing the sweeteners, going back to different, more organic cane sugar or coconut sugar or monk fruit over stevia. But he was saying how it's processed differently and how, I don't know if you use his stevia, it was some different form of it. Do you know what sweetener you're
Yeah,
using?
we use a very organic, clear. Sorry, it's like a brown colored stevia. But yeah, there's about 68 different types of stevias out there for you to choose from. And some of them just leave a very bitter taste. Some of them actually make you feel more thirsty than quenching your thirst. So if you have some, like I tested one in an electrolyte drink, I drank half of the drink, I felt more thirsty than what I should
Mm.
have, So there are a lot of blends out there as well. So you have to be very cognizant of what type of sweetener that you're using, and again, making sure that it's organic.
Yeah, I know it's hard. I think you just, again, if you can, test what works and see what you feel and pay attention.
Yeah.
But I think, looking at some supplements based on lab testing, I was one more question. Lab testing, do you like to do it how many times a year? Blood work?
Blood testing, well, it all depends. It's a minimum of every 6 months, but sometimes it works out to be every 3 months. If I have the opportunity, so for instance, Ultra Human, another ring company, they
Mm,
said they're doing something called Blood Vision, where under that app, they not only have your ring data, like your sleep data,
mhm.
HRV, they also have the blood sugar monitor, so that uploads this data
Mm.
as well, and they do something called Blood Vision. So everything is on the same app, and
Oh,
it
I
kind of
gotta look that up.
cross-pollinate each other to optimize and give you advice. So, when they threw that at me, I was like, okay, I'll do it. And then another company called SciFox said, would you test out a blood kit? So I was like, sure. So sometimes I'll just take it a lot more often than I need to, really. And then I just throw it over to Joe Cohen at Self Decode, and he just uploads it in there so I can kind of see the trends.
Yeah, I just met with Self Decode last week. That's funny. Yeah, I have to look that up because it's confusing all the different platforms, all the devices. And I like to look at people's CGM, and then some people are using Lumen to measure their breath test for metabolic flexibility. And then you're looking at their heart rate variability. It's just how many apps, and if someone really needs to keep working on having just all in one place, one device. So that's
Yeah.
smart.
Yeah, I like
Good.
it all in one place. I haven't tried the Lumex. Is it called the Lumex, isn't it? That works
Lumen.
on your breath. Lumen,
Yep.
that's it. Lumen. I haven't used that. A few people have asked me about it. What did you feel when you saw the data from that?
Well, I still need to buy one, but I own Pnoe, P-N-O-E, Greek company, metabolic testing equipment. So I do the full test with the oxygen mask. I'll measure oxygen in, carbon dioxide out, is that respiratory exchange ratio. And then, the 0.7 is fat burn, 1.0 is carbohydrates, and the 8.5 is your combination. So Lumen takes that science from your breathing. I do it for 10 minutes, but there is just a breath test measuring your CO2 with extrapolating the data that if we guess that it's your carbon dioxide, what the level is, it can tell you the respiratory exchange ratio from that breath. And so, is it as accurate as a full mask on 10 minutes? Probably not, but is it good for people day to day? Kind of get a guess if they're 1 to 5. 1 is burning fat, 5 is burning full carbs. And so you could do it in the morning. Did I wake up from a fast and I'm burning fat? Or did I wake up and I'm burning carbs? Not so good. And then if I'm working out, take a breath before. What's that workout? If I'm doing a HIIT workout, maybe if I'm a 1, I'm showing fat, I need to add some carbs in there. And then if you're doing a, zone 1, 2 workout, you don't need to eat anything if you're too fat. So it's really interesting, that data. And then if you're metabolically flexible post workout, take a breath and see if you switch back to fat burning. So I think it's good.
Right.
Another
Okay,
device
got
to
it.
play with.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a few people have asked me about that, but I know the one that you're talking about, Pinoy, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, well,
Yeah,
that's how I say it.
yeah, I've heard a lot about that as well. So I'm going to explore a little bit more about these things because I think they could be really, really. I've never tested them myself, but I'd like to see how they work to possibly apply to clients.
Yeah, well, come on over to Del Mar. I do testing Del Mar and Solana Beach, so you can come for a nice weekend to walk on the beach and avoid the sharks in Del Mar in the water. So just stay close. And we can do your resting test and your exercise test and figure out your zones and your VO2 max and your metabolism. So it's kind of
Okay,
fun.
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I'll give you a holler next time I'm down there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for your time today. And you got some steps in because you've been walking the whole time. I'm standing and
Yeah, I've
stretching.
got 2 miles in.
Wow, that's so cool. I need one of those. All right. Well, thanks, Kris. And we love learning on how we can improve the aging process and even reverse our biological age from those great tips, and learn more on your website.
Great. Thank you ever so much. I appreciate you.